Most of my videos start with a glance into the sky. We have negative 3 amps outside. It is late afternoon, shortly to 5 p.m. and I still hope we have enough sun to fully charge this battery and see what the deviation does after 3 weeks of balancing. And today I'm not talking about the battery shelf because this is still going. Yeah, it is still balancing. Today I'm talking about the Seplos Polo batteries. After the recent success with the Polo Mason battery and the version 2 of their BMS, I changed the settings accordingly to some of you guys. And we have seen some success in balancing with a passive balancer only, and also have changed the parameters and settings in the BMS to make it work with the Victron system here, and it works perfectly. Resets to 100% state of charge all the time now without hitting any overvoltage protection situation. So, and I'm keen to find out if we can do the same or similar in the Polo battery, because again, I didn't like the BMS, the very much anticipated version 3 of the Seplos BMS. I didn't like it. But the major issue with these batteries from Seplos, how they have been delivered, was the severe imbalance of all 3 battery packs they have delivered. None of them seem to be actually top balanced. So all the settings Seplos has set as default in their BMSs did not actually work. The BMSs are cutting out before that, actually far before that, with an overvoltage cell protection. And we have seen 250, 280 millivolt of deviation below 55.2 volts or below 3.4 volts already. That's how much deviation these batteries have. So I have now fully charged this battery here again. We want to do a last run with the solar and see if we can fully charge them again until all the 3 battery banks are turning off with an overvoltage protection. And we want to see if the voltage delta has actually come down, because I have charged and discharged these batteries here for the last several weeks. I've mainly used the Phoenix inverter in the afternoon to charge the big battery or to heat up the hot water, discharge the battery to around 70% and then fully charge it again to 100% the next day. And every single day we hit the overvoltage protection with all 3 batteries. And before we get started, guys, welcome back to the Off-Grid Garage here in sunny Australia, kind of sunny Australia. A little bit of clouds today. We still managed to get like 28 kilowatt hours of solar production. So that's like 50% more than I actually need. Totally happy. Okay, so let's have a look at the 3 Seplos Polo batteries or BMSs. Here we can see they are on 100% state of charge, because once you hit the overvoltage protection, they reset to 100%. And we can also see they all have degraded to 99.9% state of health already. Yeah. How does the BMS determine that if we just do shallow charges and discharges of 70 to 100% for the last 2 or 3 weeks? We can also see that the battery voltages are different, because the BMS in each of these battery banks has now turned off because of this overvoltage protection, which it's supposed to do. This is actually the main purpose of these BMSs. And then the other battery kept charging until it hits the overvoltage protection as well. So that's why the voltages are different now. And the balancers are now working. We can go into one of these batteries here, battery number 1. You can see cell number 6 and 12 are balancing. Still, balance current, I could not measure any. So voltage delta 113 millivolt here, but this is at 54.2 volts, so this doesn't mean anything. We need to fully charge it again. Here we have 113 at 53 volts, so yeah. And here we have only 63 millivolt at 53. But as soon as we charge it up, then the deviation will explode, and then we've got this cell overvoltage protection again. So to go into the settings of any of these battery banks, we have to disconnect the LAN cabling at the back, unfortunately. So this is my computer cable. This is the cable going to the servo, which is the CAN communication, and this other blue cable goes down to the next battery bank to connect them all together. So you have to disconnect the communication to the other batteries and have only my computer plugged in, and the CAN cable can stay, it doesn't hurt. And then we have to shift from parallel mode into standalone mode, and then we can connect to battery pack number 1 only, and we can have a look at the parameters. So Seplos was so kind to send me all the files again with the standard and default settings for all the BMSs I have. So for version 1, version 2 with Bluetooth, and version 3 now. I link all these standard default settings of all these BMSs down in the description on my website. So feel free to download them and then you can upload them to your BMS, and it has all the default settings coming directly from Seplos. I don't personally like these settings because some of them don't make sense, and it's a bit silly to actually charge this battery here to 57.6 volts. I mean, this is like 3.6 per cell. Maybe the small balance current needs that high of a voltage to actually work, I don't know. But then up here, the battery over voltage protection sits on 57.6 volts as well. The same as the CVL, the charge voltage limit. So why would you go in protection mode at the same time as you stop charging? That makes no sense. I've left all the parameters as they are and started charging the battery again. But eventually we have to change them a little bit, so otherwise, as I said, it makes no sense. Okay, so the only thing I want to change now is actually the cell over voltage recovery, because this sits on 3.4 volts. Here. Cell over voltage recovery. So it hits the 3.65 volts with one of the cells, and then it waits until the cells go under 3.4 until it clears this fault. And only then it also turns on the charge MOSFETs again. Otherwise it doesn't charge. It doesn't charge anymore. It doesn't charge any further until we hit 3.4 volts with all our cells. All of them. Not just one, all of them. They need to be under 3.4. So I'll change this in all the BMSs now to 3.6, I would say. So we've got a quick recovery if we hit this again. And then we start the solar charger again and see if we can still charge it up at shortly after 5 o'clock. It's cloudy, there's no sun, so maybe we have to use the power supply. Let's see. Let me change the parameters and I'll be back. Okay, I've now changed all the this one parameter in all 3 BMSs and connected them back in parallel. And well, what can I say? Now the pack number 1 tells us it is on 50% all of a sudden, while the other ones are 99.9. That's fine. And there was a bit of equalization current going between the battery banks as well, which is totally fine because all the charge MOSFETs have turned on again and they allowed actually charging, and the voltage was slightly different. But now the voltage should be fairly equal again. I don't know. This is maybe how good the BMS actually measures the voltage. So we've got a 100 millivolt difference here for whatever reason. Okay, let me turn on solar. And we may end up only with a very small current, which the BMS actually doesn't even show because it is under the threshold. And we know from the BMS comparison spreadsheet I have created that this BMS has a resolution of 0.8 amps. So it only shows a current if it is larger than 0.8 amps. That's insane. And times 3, because we've got 3 batteries in parallel, we need at least 2.5 amps coming from the solar, and I doubt we'll see. No, there's nothing. 0.3 amps from solar, so that's it for today. But that's fine. I'll just connect the power supply and then we charge from the other battery. Just give me another second. Okay, so the small power supply is connected. It's charging with 1.8 amps, and we can't see nothing. There's nothing in the BMS showing up because it's under the 0.8 amps per battery. Let me increase the current. Okay, I'm now at 2.3 amps, and there's still nothing. 0. See, it shows 0 amps, even we are charging with like 110 watts or something. Still 0. Okay, we're now at 2.8 amps. And we should see some current going in. Yeah, pack number 2 and pack number 3 are charging. They're taking all the energy, and some of the energy goes actually into pack number 1. Let me show you here. Yeah, 2.8 amps from the power supply. And here we are seeing 1.01 and 1.1. So this is like 2.2 amps. And the difference to the power supply actually goes in battery number 1, but is under the threshold. But funny enough, the voltage is still rising here with this battery, so it's actually getting charged. Okay, I'll put it on 5 amps now. 5 amps, and now we finally can see the current here going into pack number 1 as well. Unfortunately, I cannot see all the 3 packs at the same time, so I need to go back and forward all the time, which makes it really hard to follow this whole process. but we want to have a look at the deviation once each of the packs reaches the 3.65 volts. Because I have written down the start numbers of the deviation when I started this testing here 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And I want to compare if this daily cycling has made a difference to when we started. So here we have already 210 millivolt at not even 54 volts. We've got 89 here at 54. And we've got 84 here. So it's only pack number 2 which is so out of balance for some reason. Crazy. Yeah, we've got the cell high voltage alarm now at 3.5, I think. And I think this will be the first one to turn off. So you can see here the maximum cell voltage is 3.4, 3.6 and 3.46 here. So pack number 1 and 3 are a bit lower than pack number 2. Just looking at the deviation. I was just wondering why we have a cell high voltage alarm here in this battery pack number 3, but none of the cells is actually over 3.5 volts. But I think it has never cleared from the last charge cycle on this battery pack. Okay, we are having an overvoltage disconnect here, 292, pack number 2, 292. Whew, that is a lot. Okay, so who's next? So this one does not charge anymore. Charge MOSFETs have turned off. And you can also see it has now reset to 100% state of charge because of this overvoltage protection situation. So we are hitting 3.5 volts here with pack number 3. There we go, cell number 4 is our highest. You can see the balancer is balancing number 4 and 7. And again, this is the weird thing here in this BMS. It needs to have 2 cells in between the balance action. It cannot balance neighboring cells. So number 4 and 5 are high. It can balance only one of them. It is just how this BMS is designed. But we can also see the balancer stays actually on in the BMS if there is a cell overvoltage protection. So it tries to bring down the cell voltages, which it has already from 3.65 to 3.61. So there is a bit of balancing happening, but also the cell voltages would come down naturally as well, even without the balancer being turned on. And they would settle at around 3.35 to 3.4 volts, depending how long you wait. And this is exactly where you should float your lithium batteries, because this is the natural rest voltage of the cells anyway. Okay, we have reached 3.6 volts here with pack number 3. Voltage is climbing fast now. 3 cells are balancing. Now you can see that it always leaves 2 cell channels in between the balancing function. Yeah. So the next one possible would be cell number 10 then again, because it needs these 2 as a space in between. For heat disposal purposes, they explained. Okay, we are close here. Bang, 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 yes. Okay, 260, 265 at 55. Okay, it's now only pack number 1, which gets charged, gets the full 5 amps now of our charger. And here again we can see in cell number 3, 6, 9 and 12. Yeah. Even there are cells in between which are high as well, and now I can't balance them because they are too close to the other ones. Okay, we are done. 55.6 volts it was here around at 289 millivolt. All right, I want to show you the result here on the paper quickly. So there you've got the numbers. The top row is where we started balancing 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is the maximum deviation each pack had when we hit the 3.65 volts. 284 millivolt in pack number 1. And now after several weeks of balancing and cycling the battery, we still have 289 millivolts. So this is actually has not moved or even increased by 5 millivolts. It has not moved. Pack number 2, 254 it was. And we have now 292. I have measured in between as well 288. So I'm not sure which one of these is true, but if we take the worst one here, if we take the 288, it has not moved. And the last pack comes from 253 millivolt deviation to 265 now after all these weeks of balancing and cycling and stuff like this. So From this perspective, I could see the balancer has not done any work, it's not improving the deviation at all. So we are not coming over 50, what was it, like 56.2 volts or something. That was the maximum pack number 1 could do. We're not coming over that. They all have a high deviation, 280 millivolt, crazy. So, and now the big question is, what is the problem here? Is it just the missing top balancing they have not done with these batteries here? Or is the balancer really that shit in these BMSs? Or is there even an issue with these pouch cells they are using, these lithium iron phosphate pouch cells? It's a 2P16S battery. If you haven't seen the video of these Polo batteries, it's linked underneath in the description. So anyway, there's only one solution to rectify this. Just next to the Frankenstein battery, not on top of it, because we cannot put anything on top of the Frankenstein battery. Yes, it is the NEEEEEEYY 15 amp smart active balancer. The knee will sort out the Polo. So now we have to remove all these plastic covers here on the back of the battery, which is a bit of a... See if I can just go in between here. Yes, that's how they come off. Okay, so this should give us access to the bus bars. Okay guys, I don't know if this actually works. I have difficulties to actually reach the bus bars on the back of the battery here with my crocodile clamps. I think we've got the positive and negative here alternating up and down along this printed PCB, but I'm not sure how I should reach them here in this tight space. It may work in this area here, but then we've got this... Yeah, there's no way to get the crocodile clamps in there. No way. So, I don't know how to top balance this battery. I have no idea. I've got no access to the terminals. Total nightmare. Total nightmare. So the only real access to all the battery terminals is on this side here with the balance cables going into the BMS. This is the only access. But then I'm balancing with 15 amps. I have to turn down the active balancer a bit then to maybe 5 amps or 2 amps or something. Otherwise these cables are melting. But I also have to disconnect everything and solder other cables on here so to give me actually access to each individual cell. It is a total nightmare. Okay, so after 10-15 minutes looking at this battery here, I can find only one way to balance this pack, and it's not with a knee. I don't have access to these terminals at the back, no way. So the only option I can see here how to top balance this battery is by using the light bulb method. We're using these 12-volt light bulbs here to discharge the high voltage cells manually, and hopefully we get a decent balance in, but this will take forever. They are 100 ampere hour cells, and I would need to do this with all 3 banks. Really? I could of course take out the whole battery here. You know, there are 2 bolts here on each side holding this whole pack down, and then crane out the whole battery, put this on the workbench, and then I've got access to all the bus bars on the back. But I would need to disconnect a lot of cables, and they are not easy to access either. So from a serviceability, this battery is really... It is pre-assembled, it is pre-built. There's nothing the customer needs to do actually, but, well, it is not top balanced and is not balancing. So something needs to be done. And this is probably, again, me just testing this battery out here. If you buy such a Seplos Polo battery here, it is totally fine to use it as it is. It will disconnect at some stage because one of the cells will hit 3.65 volts. Seplos may tell you that this will balance out eventually itself over time, and it may, but I'm not going to wait 2 years now until this happens. I want to have this balanced tonight or tomorrow, and then we can start testing this BMS again and see if the passive balancer is actually active to keep this battery under control once it is top balanced. We need to top balance it manually first, because the BMS can't do it. But from the capacity test we have done with this battery, you are getting the 100 ampere hours almost out of this battery, even with this top imbalance. And usually you use the battery only between 10 and 90% state of charge anyway. So who cares? Well, I do. So my dear friends, this is the setup for tonight then. We've got the adjustable power supply down here. It is connected to our vertical bus bars, but only one circuit breaker will be turned on for the top battery. The other two banks will stay off, because we only concentrate on this one battery at the moment here. I think we will start with a voltage of 55.5 volts. This is something the battery can still handle without going into over voltage protection. And then we will increase slowly the voltage here and see how we go. And see if I can handle this battery. So how this now works is, we've got 16 cells here in series. And basically every of these notches here is one battery. Yeah, these are 16 notches, 16 batteries. We've got one terminal up here, and the other one is down here in this hole. Then the next one here, just the opposite. So positive up here, negative down here, positive, negative, positive, negative. Doesn't really matter, because we are just using the light bulbs, two cables connected to the cell, and then we start discharging the high voltage cells. This one pulls around 20 amps from a 3-volt battery. But I really want to bring these high voltage cells down as quick as possible, so we can increase the overall pack voltage then, and hopefully don't have a disconnect anymore until we see 57.6 volts. Because this is the recommended or default setting in the BMS. Charge this battery to 57.6 volts, which none of the 3 batteries actually reaches. They all turn off far before reaching this high voltage. Okay, let me have dinner, and then we get started with the manual passive balancing and the light bulbs. Okay, we are done. We're done for tonight, at least. This was literally 2 hours of manually balancing, passive balancing. And I am a lot slower than a passive balancer with my cables. So we have now reached 57.6 volts. This is the set voltage in the BMS, what Seplos delivers these batteries with. And we're still charging with 80 milliamps around. And let me show you the BMS. So here we are, my friends. 57.7 says the BMS. Deviation is down to 53 millivolt. It was at 46 millivolt just a few minutes ago, but now it is slowly climbing again. The charging current is going down, but it is still enough to raise the voltage in the high voltage cells, but not enough to raise the voltage in the lower voltage cells. So we are drifting apart slowly again, and the balancer doesn't seem to be strong enough to cope with 88 milliamps. Now, you can see here the balancer number 3, number 6, number 11, number 14 are balancing, but deviation is climbing. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'll leave the power supply running overnight on this setting on 57.7 volts. So, and we will have a look in the morning again and see how the deviation has developed. If it has increased, like it just did again, or has it decreased actually, was the passive balancer enough at 3.6 volts to keep it under control, still charging with 86 milliamps. Okay, let's find out. You have a wonderful good night's sleep and see you tomorrow morning. Oh, what you are not doing for the sake of testing, right? So in here we can see the row of resistors they are using to balance the batteries. And this is a 200 a 200 ohm resistor. I just discovered that some of them are upside down and some of them are... What is going on here? We can't leave it like this. This is totally against my OCD. I have to unsolder them and turn them around, so they're all in the same direction. 3.6 volts divided by 200 ohms gives us a balance current of 18 milliamps. Yeah. So this would be the maximum balance current we can expect from this passive balancer. 18 milliamps. It is 18 milliamps. It is insane. Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. It is close to 6 a.m. in the morning. Sun has already risen, actually. And I've used the big power supply because the voltage is stable with this one. This one is drifting a bit up and down sometimes, but this one keeps the voltage stable at 57.8. And we are still charging with 20 milliamps into the Seplos Polo battery. So, and this morning we want to have a look at the drift. We want to start the BMS Studio. Want to connect to the battery. We now have a deviation cell difference of 135 millivolt. We started last night 9 hours ago, 8 hours ago, with around 55 millivolt deviation. That's when I stopped using the light bulbs and discharged the high voltage cells. I could get it down to around 50 millivolt, 55, 58 when we started. And the high voltage cell has come down from 3.641 to 3.605 now. But also the low voltage cell was on 3.570. And this is now 100 millivolt lower. And hence we see a massive increase in deviation. So even the balancers are working on 5 cells here, but this 18 milliamp balance current obviously doesn't cut it. Yeah, this is obviously not working. Something is not right with this design. The battery should have been balanced perfectly even with this passive balancer overnight, keeping the voltage at 57.8 volts. We even have a over voltage protection, a cell over voltage protection. So one of the cells actually hit the 3.65 volts and turned off charge MOSFETs. Okay, so what I will do now is I'll take some screenshots and some photos here of the setup and send this all to Seplos and wait for an explanation. They need to see, this is a very new BMS design, what they have done with the version 3 of the Seplos BMS. But how is this supposed to work? You know, these tiny balance currents, how do they think their battery will work and will actually reach 57.6 volts? Because this is the set voltage in their parameters. Read all. In their parameters here, the charging request voltage is 57.6 volts. How is this supposed to work? I'll ask them and I'll be back with an answer soon. You have a wonderful day and we talk again later. So guys, it is now a few days later and I got in contact with the Seplos team. I sent them all the screenshots and some videos and everything, all the information they needed to see what the problem actually is with the battery, with the BMS, not the battery, the BMS. And I had also a discussion with their technical team and they said the balancer should have actually a balance current of 1.5 amps maximum. This is the maximum this BMS can passive balance. 1.5 amps. Unbelievable. I don't know how. It's a 20 ohm resistor. Anyway, they came up with a solution for this problem, which I want to show you in the next video. I don't want to add this to this video here anymore because there's already so much information in here. So let's do another video and we will see if the solution actually works and we can make this BMS great again. And I also apologize for not making a video for a couple of days. But as you have seen in this video here, it took me quite a few days to test this battery and make this video. But now we are back on track and hopefully we have a solution for this problem. So, as always guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all your great support here, for all these wonderful people who have donated to the channel, keeping this show alive. Welcome to all the new SPAT members. And until the next video guys, which is coming out very soon, you stay charged, stay safe, and thanks again for watching. See you then. Bye bye.